Go with it.
Right.
And guess what? If we start getting the temples back, their income will start going down, won't it?
Yeah.
Because if the devotees in the temple start saying, we aren't going to buy into this, you guys are bad. What's happened with, what's his name? Satya Sai Baba is that when he was exposed as a pedophile, not that we don't have any, and when he was exposed as a hermaphrodite, we probably have hermaphrodites. When he was exposed, half his congregation left. Something like 3 million people left. Well, they left 3 million, a bunch of crazy people, most of whom were in the government. He had all these connections in the government. And so they aren't going to let go of him. They don't care what he's doing with his disciples. If he's having sex with his male disciples' children, he doesn't care. They don't care. The government doesn't. They just like the government and ISKCON. They just want what it's in it for themselves. But 3 million people, he had 6 million followers. Out of the 3 million left, it was a shock. If you go online, you can't find it. They've covered it up very nicely.
Okay, are we going to read?
I was keenly aware. What?
Are we going to read?
I don't know when Ramachandra says so.
Let's
He's
start.
still studying it up, I think, right?
There we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay, have you got it, Rupa?
Yeah. Hold the criminal GBC accountable for having stifled and suppressed chanting for 52 years. They stole ISKCON from Srila Prabhupada and declared themselves to be dictators of ISKCON, not temple presidents elected for 3-year terms with no power over temples whatsoever. The GBC is presently on its last legs. They are being challenged by the Indian ICC as well as the bureau that controls Indian ISKCON by charter. They cannot hold power for more than a few more years, and when we expose them for their huge operate against Srila Prabhupada by refusing devotional service and grabbing money and power as a self-created totalitarian conspiracy against Srila Prabhupada, the temples can be returned to 1970 ISKCON, and the only doctrine for temples and devotees will be Srila Prabhupada's teaching, Vani, literature, recorded kirtan, chanting, lectures, etc. Satya Sai Baba lost over half his millions of followers when he was exposed as a hermaphrodite child molester. Ramachandra?
What?
AC will have to fact the disgust of all those devotees who never thought that they were being cheated and misled by the GBC. A crime in 1970 is still a crime today. They do not need to be brought to account. They must simply be ignored and excluded from ISKCON unless they return to being lowly members of the congregations. With no more totalitarian Vatican cardinal-styled GBC, Srila Prabhupada will naturally take his place in the center of ISKCON and remain there powerfully representing the Yuga Avatar and Lord Krishna as their transparent biomedium until the end of the golden age of Kali. We have lost only 52 years out of 10,000 years. ISKCON has not yet even begun. Instead of making the GBC rich and powerful, temples will all be reincorporated individually, as Srila Prabhupada decreed in his incorporation papers of ISKCON in 1966. When the temples are all independent, no global ISKCON corporation, and the GBC is elected by the temple presidents in order to help new temples get up to speed and older temples to be able to collaborate on bigger projects, no temple will be under that control of the presently illegal unelected GBC. All that is needed from us is to exercise common sense. The hard work has already been done by the Yuga Avatar, Srila Prabhupada and Lord Krishna. Ramachandra, can you read?
If you read.
we have a request for you to read, Rupa. It's just a few more paragraphs.
Okay. As transparent via medium and last Sampradaya Acharya, Srila Prabhupada will lead us birth after birth until the end of the golden age of Kali for the next 10,000 years. What if what I have described above is what will happen, whether or not we choose to participate in our present lifetimes? With the temples restored to Srila Prabhupada's direct control, using only his melodies, mridanga beats, swami step, and kartal sound, the main task of the independent ISKCON temples will be chanting in every town and village day and night with Nagar Sankirtan. Does that answer your question?
Okay, Ramachandra, you're in charge.
All right, so let me do this one second here. Let me go back. Let me start the videos for all the devotees. Everyone's ready? Okay. Start video.
Oh, you haven't been recording this?
No, it's live. We're live. It's recorded. It's being recorded. Don't worry. Okay, so let's go back here.
I'm going to be worried for 10,000 years.
So, so the main purpose of us, you writing this and informing people that what has not been done by Prabhupada, what Prabhupada exactly wanted and how he wanted it, is to educate or help people understand what actually Srila Prabhupada wanted and how he wanted things done. And
yes, I'm going further than that. I'm saying that they didn't do anything that Prabhupada wanted in terms of representing him as the Acharya of ISKCON, representing his kirtans as the sound vibration that link us with Krishna Loka, not with some Indian group of people somewhere from the past. That everything that Prabhupada did, they buried it, they hid it, they obscured it, and they lied about it so that we would become beholden to them, not to Srila Prabhupada. And then conveniently enough, they produce their own gurus. They elect them, they appoint their own gurus so that we never need to be in connection with Prabhupada again. That's how bad it is.
Oh. So you're saying that they distorted everything after 1970?
Yes. That we have to get down in the core of our hearts. I do too. Because I'm just as capable of saying, well, we're GBC, and there was no GBC. If we say there was no legal GBC, why do we care what the criminals do?
Right,
if the criminals take over your whole business, like Mitt Romney took over Staples and stripped it of all its assets. What do we care? When Mafia takes over the pizza parlor or the Italian restaurant, takes all the assets and ties up all the people that care about the restaurant, like the owners, and keeps them in a back room tied up to chairs. Why are we concerned about the Mafia?
Right.
Let's be concerned about the Italian restaurant. Let's be concerned about Staples, that it gets back on its feet and does the exemplary job that it was doing before Mitt Romney got a hold of it.
So what
I'm saying? We don't need to be involved in their crap. On one side of the crap or the other side of the crap. And I did point out, but I won't go into it, when you have that interview with two very auspicious devotees, they're so up to their ears in the crap. They're just trying to solve the crap with reason, logic, and history and quotes and whatnot. They're trying to make the crap better. I'm saying they don't need to make the crap better. Crap is crap.
Leave it there.
You know what crap is? It makes good fertilizer. The crap can be utilized as fertilizer to grow genuine crops. Crap means manure means fertilizer. So it's what they're saying is just blah, blah, blah. They're just up to their faces in manure, gobbling up the manure and spitting out the manure. If that's what they want to do, that's good. It makes the manure better for growing new crops. Are they going to solve the problem with what they're doing?
No.
Not until donkeys fly or pigs sing. But is their knowledge and their research valuable to us? As a library book, yes, we can go to it and get facts We can go to and get opinions. We can go to them for information. But these are the people that are fighting the GBC and fighting ISKCON, fighting. They're the ones that want to say that ISKCON ended with the July 9th letter. No. ISKCON ended in 1970 because the GBC was not elected by the temple presidents.
Right.
We can make that the simple standard. Then we can say, what is your view for ISKCON in the future? And Ramachandra and I and Mahaprabhu and Rupa Manjari and anyone else can say, we want common sense because nothing else is required. We already have all the Shastra we need. You don't have to read all they're all considered reading Prabhupada's original books. Yeah, we must have Prabhupada's original books, but not for us. We need to understand, to hear Prabhupada as the Acharya, not as a distant reference point accessible only through a book.
Here, Prabhupada as an Acharya. How would one do that if they don't read Prabhupada's original books? Or
first of all, by following his instructions.
Okay, so where is that at? In his
Well,
books?
first of all, you have to elect the GBC to 3-year terms, and you have to incorporate each ISKCON temple as an individually incorporated temple. Once you do that, the temples, individual temples, will have nothing to do except propagate Prabhupada's teachings. They will not be supporting this bloated tumor called the GBC.
1 second, Nara Narayan Prabhu. We have a new, someone new joined, Indian Tribal Care Trust. Who is this person? And no, where are you? Okay, they exited. Excellent. Let's go back.
Okay, so do you see what I'm saying? That once we have what we need to be able to say is, we're no longer interested in the GBC. We are interested in the devotees, and the devotees are interested in ISKCON. So if we get the devotees to see through the GBC as criminals, it will be just like Satya Sai Baba's 3 million followers saying, how disgusting when we were following this pervert. Why were we? So we want the rank and file devotees to turn around, say, is this true? They rebelled against Prabhupada. This is why I keep using strong language. They rejected Prabhupada. They rebelled against Prabhupada. They lied to us. They gave us fake kirtans. They gave us changed books. They gave us so many things simply to preserve themselves and make money for themselves and power. And then their gurus are just people to keep the temples in place for their power and their economic benefit. No, we reject that. When they say no, we reject, that will be our great voting point. That's what the French Revolution was about. If you study before the revolution, they first estate, second estate, third estate, and fourth estate were all struggling amongst themselves, trying to find a way to satisfy and bring about a republic in France that would be similar to the United States. They came in later. So the first estate was the monarchy, the second estate was the priesthood, Catholic priests, the third estate was the mercantile, and the fourth estate was the laborers. But when the laborers said, we're not going to sit here discussing this forever, they said, liberté, égalité, fraternité, liberty, brotherhood. I know, was it liberté, fraternité, égalité, fraternité. Okay, liberty, equality, and brotherhood. Then they stormed the Bastille, which meant they let out all the prisoners, which became a formidable fighting force against the first, second, and third estate. At which point, the first, second, and third estate were largely beheaded on the guillotine. So that's what we're looking for, is to create the fourth estate revolt. What is the fourth estate? The rank and file devotees. Does that make sense? That's how it works in history. That's how the Russian Revolution worked as well. That's also how the American Revolution worked as well.
Hmm.
We don't have to get caught up with our heads up there, you know what?
Hmm.
It's not a very good view. And you might get slapped with a hemorrhoid.
1 second.
You
Okay.
keep peering to see what they can see.
Anyone have any questions? Prabhu's?
Or statements.
Who's here? Mohit Prabhu? Comments? 1 second.
Is this too radical for Mohit?
Mohit. Okay. Okay, so some questions now. 1 second, Nara Narayan Prabhu, I'll ask the question. Let me go to the page here. We have Vinayaka Prabhu coming on now. So let me share the screen so he can see.
Was he listening to what we were saying?
Vinayak Prabhu just coming in right now. So
he didn't see the text of what we were
No.
discussing.
no. So
Okay, maybe we should go over it again, but let's see. This is what is in this text is incredibly vital to it is the future of ISKCON as Prabhupada created it. And it is the divorce document, the divorce papers to separate us from the GBC, the abusive spouse called the GBC.
So what do you mean by here? They cannot hold, I'm highlighted. Okay, here. It's saying they cannot hold power for more than a few more years. And when we expose them for their huge apparat against Srila Prabhupada by refusing devotional service and grabbing money and power as a self-created totalitarian conspiracy against Srila Prabhupada.
Totalitarian.
Yeah. So you mean this is the system that they're functioning as right now? And once,
Well, wouldn't you say?
Yeah,
We were in
yeah.
touch with a very big shot in the GBC conversation, who's working more with the ICC. He
Yeah.
is saying, he said he didn't think the GBC can continue as they are for more than a few more years.
yeah, that's what he said. Yes, yes, exactly.
Well, why do I need to say it? I'm simply, we heard that conversation, you and I both. I'm putting this in writing for everyone to hear without mentioning the names of who's involved.
Yeah.
Don't need to. If the guy in an authoritative position says that they can't hang on for very much longer, well, that's true. So if they can't hang on for another 20 years, imagine what they cannot hang on to for 500 or 5,000 or 10,000 years. This is why it's very important for us not to look at things right under our nose.
Yeah.
Or stick our heads up inside the interiors of people that will be dead of old age very shortly. We don't need that view. What we need is an overview. We need an ISKCON that represents no one but Prabhupada. If you stop to think of it, if you take away the GBC completely and their representative gurus completely, I mean, the gurus can come or stay, whatever people want them to do. But if the GBC can no longer appoint them, then the GBC can no longer retract them. So if they're there, then who cares? If people want a guru, let them have a guru. It doesn't affect us. What will happen is when the GBC is out of the picture, is all of a sudden, Prabhupada will come back into the picture. Particularly if the GBC is then, not them, not that GBC, not the ones who's we try to avoid putting our heads in their private parts. Not that GBC, the GBC that Prabhupada created will be temple presidents elected for 5-year terms, 3-year terms. Those GBC will be powerful, create a powerful ability for the temples to reorient themselves to being the followers of Prabhupada, with Prabhupada in the center, Prabhupada's sound vibration in the center, Prabhupada's kirtan, Prabhupada's japa sound, Prabhupada's mridanga beat in the center. Not kirtanistas that they pay hundreds of dollars to come and howl in temples. They do that to separate us from Prabhupada. And I pointed out, there was a Prabhupada festival Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday.
In Los Angeles, right?
In Los Angeles, yeah.
Yes.
Very nice devotee created it. They did the entire festival without one Prabhupada kirtan. Then there was a blank spot, an anti-Prabhupada kirtan fellow who likes me said, well, here's your chance. You can chant a Prabhupada kirtan. So I went up on the stage and I chanted a Hari Prabhupada kirtan because the highly paid kirtanista was late. So I chanted for 5, 10, 15 minutes at the most. Then the kirtanista came in. You have to get off the stage now. The real kirtan leader has shown up. And all I was doing was chanting Prabhupada's sound vibration. There's a devotee named Nityananda that said he very much liked the way I chanted Prabhupada's melodies. He published it on one of these online chats.
Jai, we have Janas Priya Prabhu here. Sorry.
Haribol, Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada, all glories
Jai.
to the assembled devotees.
Jai, Haribol.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining, Prabhu.
It's a pleasure to be in company of such exalted personalities. Thank you for allowing
Haribol.
me.
Glories to Prabhupada.
Okay, so let me go back to the screen here. So, so Nara Narayan Prabhu, you're saying that there's no need to discuss what has happened in the past, right? You're saying whatever has happened.
What for?
Hmm.
Whatever's happened, happened, isn't it?
Yes.
Isn't that bad enough by itself?
Yes, it's bad enough
That
by
we have
itself.
to ritualize it and talk about it and make it, sing hymns about it and pledge allegiance to it? Why do we care? If they committed a crime, the only thing we need to worry about the past is why haven't the criminals been brought to account? That's
Because
the only thing about the past.
because it's all a big
52
club.
years
and-
ago, they committed a crime 52 years ago. What are we going to do? Talk about everything they've done last week?
Mhm.
We need to talk about what they did 52 years ago and hold them to account for that, not anything they did after that. Anything they did after that was some Vinayak saying to play something with 1.75 speed. But what? This would be 15 minutes video.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah.
Vinayak Prabhu, once we're done with this, then we'll go to what Vinayak Prabhu wants. So we'll do that.
Is there any statutes of limitations on any of these legal matters? The
It
time
doesn't
matters?
matter. It's
Hmm.
not even a legal matter. The law, we are the law. ISKCON, Prabhupada is the law. Lord Chaitanya is the law. Why do we need to go to the government for law?
No, just in case, just to know that we have standing, legal standing.
We don't, it doesn't matter. They
So
are-
far it matters because they're still in charge.
Shall we say, what would you say about a disciple who refuses, 12 disciples that refuse to obey the written order of their spiritual master that he signed on legal paper and which they signed on legal paper?
I will say
would you say about
I would
this?
say
What's
what Prabhupada said, what Bhaktisiddhanta said. That's what I will say.
Okay, what did they say?
They say somebody's disobedient, is not obeying, then he hasn't learned the first principle, humility.
But what is his status as a disciple who refuses to follow?
He becomes persona non grata,
Meaning he's no longer a disciple, right?
right?
So we're saying the GBC is worse than punishable in a court of law. What will we get out of a court of law? Oh, give us back the money you stole for 52 years? Let him keep it. Krishna's a rich man. He's not a poor man. Prabhupada said that. Krishna's not a poor man. We can get another gazillion dollars. That's not the issue. The issue is getting their fingers out of ISKCON. And the way to get them out of
They're
ISKCON is
called.
to
They
say,
call. They got
You
tentacles.
you cease to be disciples when you disobeyed the spiritual master.
You terrible clown.
They don't got
Is it?
fingers. They got tentacles like an octopus.
So what?
Bloodsuckers.
We've got knives. What difference does it
Yeah,
make?
so better we start using
We're
knives.
not trying to, you make it sound like we're trying to get even with the GBC. We're not. Let the GBC keep every penny they've stolen. Let them keep every stupid title they patted themselves on the head with. That's not our problem. Let them do it. Let us take away their followers by telling their followers the truth. That's why I gave the comparison to Satya Sai Baba. 3 million of his followers left because they found out he was a pedophile. Our GBC has done far worse things than Satya Sai Baba's done. But anyhow, let us make a clash where the disciples, the people that are initiated in ISKCON, either by Prabhupada, who are still alive, or by the so-called new gurus, that they say this was done by criminality. So we reject it as such. And we want Prabhupada's GBC back again, composed of temple presidents who are on a ballot and elected for 3-year terms, renewable 3-year terms, just like the senators in the United States Senate. So, I mean, why do we need to get caught up in their dirty underwear? I would prefer not to.
I think that's the only way to achieve anything is through and they got so much money, and that's what is nothing's happening because
They have the money, but we're not objecting.
I think the truth has never been presented, Janaspriya Prabhu.
there's so many temple presidents and sannyasis that have stolen millions and millions of dollars, and it's still
That's
happening.
wonderful.
And not one of these persons has ever been to court. I don't understand.
Why go to court? There's nothing to do in a court. Why do we need to go to court to solve
There's
a
always-
theological question? If you put Prabhupada in the center, that's all we need. We don't need to court.
No, my
rule
point is that
till
they
we
get
money out of
They
them.
get away. They've been getting away for.
So what? Let them run with the bags full of money. Do you think that will do them any good in the court of Yamaraj? Supposing they got big bags of money and jewels and whatnot, and they run there and they die and they go to the court of Yamaraj. What's going to happen with their money?
No idea.
Well, do we need to know? Do we care?
I don't care.
I don't either. So let's stop talking about taking him to court. Let's talk about restoring ISKCON to Prabhupada.
So what's the first step that we have to take to accomplish that? The
We
very
need to
first step.
create a worldwide rejection of the GBC as having committed the greatest criminal aparad against Srila Prabhupada in the golden age of Kali. The greatest aparad against Lord Chaitanya, the Yuga Avatar, the greatest aparad against Krishna was for them to reject Prabhupada's decisive means of having an elected GBC. Why? Because the GBC helps open temples. Let's remember, when Prabhupada created the GBC, it was in the middle of the Hare Krishna explosion. The temples were all independent. I was sent to Detroit. I was in the GBC. It was the year before. I went to Detroit. I went to Buffalo. I set up the temple. I carved deities. I taught them Sankirtan. I taught them how to do deity worship. That's what the GBC is supposed to do. Not control, take money, and then be in charge. I was never in charge of Detroit. I put my protege, Bhagavan, in charge of Detroit. I didn't put him. He just was naturally there. He came to that position because that's what he was meant to do. He became the temple president. And then I left and went to Buffalo and did the same thing in Buffalo. I didn't take over Buffalo. Rupanuga was in charge of Buffalo. So if I were a GBC, which I did the job of the GBC, I simply helped set up the temples. Now, if you want to see the irony, Los Angeles, how many temples, Prabhu, would you say Los Angeles has?
I don't understand.
How many ISKCON temples
One.
are in Los Angeles?
One.
What's the population of Los Angeles?
I think there's like 4 or 5 temples. There's some preaching centers.
Where?
There's one
I'm not
in
aware of
East
them.
LA, one in East LA. There's another one somewhere in Watts or somewhere.
I'm talking about full-fledged temples.
No, preaching centers.
Why not full-fledged temples?
Well, you asked a question.
Independent.
I'm just giving an answer.
Okay, there's preaching centers under the control of who?
Same people. Well,
Who are
some
the
are
same people?
independent. Some are semi-independent. Some are not.
But they're under the control of the GBC. Do they call
Mostly,
themselves?
yeah.
Do they register as ISKCON?
I'm not 100%. I haven't. I don't know. But like here and on this island.
They can't register as ISKCON because the GBC will take them to court.
Yeah, but they go by
GBC
Hare Krishna.
controls 100% of every preaching center and every temple.
Yeah.
But Los Angeles, Rupa Manjari, how many population do you think there is in Los Angeles?
10 million.
Okay, in 10 million people in Los Angeles, one temple, and you say 2 little preaching centers that may or may not have any connection with this one. Does that make sense?
My question is, where is Prabhupada's traditional temple where only Prabhupada is the guru? Where is that temple in LA?
Well, I had 2. I had 2. I had one with 25 devotees on La Cienega Boulevard, on La Brea Boulevard,
No, I
and
mean,
I had one that had
2022.
45 people coming on Jefferson Boulevard. But we couldn't call
2020.
ourselves. We couldn't call ourselves.
2022. Today.
What?
Today. 2022.
They
February.
can't. They are not allowed by law to do it. It's illegal. The only way to open up more temples is to get rid of the GBC. And they're,
We can just keep a new name for the temple if law is a problem. Instead of ISKCON, we can give it a name like Hare Krishna Movement.
we can do that, but the point is, how many branches of different things do you want? We want ISKCON back again because Krishna created ISKCON through Prabhupada. Is there any problem with us getting rid of the GBC? I mean, are you willing to get rid of the GBC?
Okay.
Or put it another way, would you like to see the GBC go?
I think they got 5-10 years left, so it's gonna happen automatically.
Okay, so you want to wait 5 or 10 years.
Yeah,
You
then
don't want to
second
get rid of the
generation is going to
GBC.
come.
What if
That's
we
So
get rid of
I think if we put more effort on the younger
What if we could get rid
generation,
of-
if
what
we
if we
start
could get rid
training young devotees.
do you
Training-
really like the GBC that much?
No, we need to train young Prabhupanugas, train them because we're gonna die.
Prabhupada Nuga. If there was
So-
a Prabhupada Nuga, they'd be against the GBC.
We'll be gone. I'll be gone 5-10 years, guaranteed.
Okay, so we should just sit quiet and wait.
No, we need to train young Prabhupanugas as they're
Why
interested
don't we make a
improving.
movement? Would you like to see a movement started that within 2 or 3 years, we have gotten the congregations to turn against the GBC?
Yes, sir.
That's our goal. That's the League for 10K. Why? Because we're not interested in 2 or 3 years or 10 years or whenever they die or whatever you'd like to see
No,
them do.
I was kind of presenting the worst case scenario. Not that
The
that's
worst
what
case scenario is we're going to die and this kind will go to nowhere.
Yeah.
But while we still have breath in our body, why don't we stop thinking about our body and think about creating a movement? Where would you like to be in 500 years, Prabhu?
I'm happy thinking of 5 days.
No, let's try 500 years. Where would you like to be in 500 years from now?
500 years from now, let's see.
You, personally.
I definitely want to be out of this. I don't think 500, I think 300 years, maybe less. 3 lifetimes. Usually, if you're sincere and you try
What
to
is
the
it you're
best of
planning
your
to do?
ability.
What is
I-
he planning to do?
I like feeding prasadam to people. That's my thing. I'm a prasadam person.
Okay, you can do that for 5,000 years. So if you want to distribute prasadam, do it for 5,000 years. I will give you my personal blessing.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, but what would you like ISKCON to be in 5,000? What would you like to be in terms of the birth you take in 5,000 years?
I liked it to be when Srila Prabhupada was here and we were all brothers and sisters, and you could
Okay,
go to any temple and you had your family. It was so nice. You could travel anywhere in the world.
Would you like that to be the way it is in 5,000 years?
Yes, sir. No,
Well,
not
that's what
five.
we're doing. The League for 10K means not just 5,000 years, but 10,000 years.
No, I want the next.
We want ISKCON 1970 to still exist 10,000 years from now.
I'm more in
So we
the
have to
present.
we have
I
to
want it.
develop a backbone.
I want
We
it
need the
now.
time.
Now. I want it now.
Then
Not
let's
5,000
make it happen now. Are you with us?
It's happening.
100%?
I'm here. Are here. You're here. All these wonderful devotees were here. We're doing it.
Yes, but we have to declare it. Do you like common sense?
100%.
Okay, common sense is what we need. If you want Shastra, Prabhupada's already written it all. We don't need more Shastra for 10,000 years.
Could I tell a short story? Srila Prabhupada, somebody asked him about deity worship. They didn't know anything, but they had deities. And Prabhupada said, just use common sense. Krishna's a child. You need to feed him, change his clothes, talk to him nicely. Common sense.
What temple was that?
I don't. I just heard the story. I read it in one of Prabhupada's letters. I'll find it.
Yes, no, you don't have to. I believe you. I believe you. We don't have to constantly be looking for answers because
But
the answer is the GBC took the Prabhupada's movement away from him for 52 years. Let's solve that little detail before we start searching for letters to find out what we should do next. Because if you take the GBC out of ISKCON and replace it with an elected GBC in individually incorporated temples, then all you need to do is what we did back in 1968. I was initiated in September 20th, 1968. All we did back then was chant Hare Krishna, go and Sankirtan, do projects for the temple, did Rath Yatra. That's what we did. We didn't need a GBC back then. And we did fine.
Yep.
Without the GBC. We were an independent temple in San Francisco. There was an independent temple in Detroit. No, not yet. There's independent temple.
Could I ask you? Could I ask you how did you get the name Vishwakarma? Who gave you that
It's
name?
not a name. It's not a name.
It's a title.
Yes. Prabhupada's title.
I understand that.
PhD.
Where did that title came from to you?
1969, New Vrindavan. I was fixing the locks on Srila Prabhupada's suitcase, putting locks on. He was out for a morning walk. Devananda, his personal servant, warned me, you better be finished by the time the Prabhupada comes back from his walk, or he'll become very angry at you. So I was sweating away trying to get it done. Well, what I didn't know is it started to rain outside. So Srila Prabhupada came back inside of 15 minutes, not an hour and a half. And he sat at the end of the room, and I was sweating bullets. And I was working on his suitcase, putting padlocks in it, very crude. And on top of that, his clothes were in it, and they were getting bits of wood from the drill were getting inside the. I mean, I was really panicking. So Prabhupada is sitting there in the dark because it's before I put a window in at New Vrindavan behind. If you've ever been to New Vrindavan, to the old farm, there's a big skylight. Well, I installed that there for Prabhupada, but there was none there when he was there in 1969. And so what happened is I was working there praying that Prabhupada wouldn't come out as Lord Nisringadev and rip me to shreds or whatever horrible thing Devananda had in store for me. And Prabhupada looked at me. Now I'm hearing impaired. I've been hearing impaired since I was 20. A group called the Chambers Brothers played loudly through speakers and I lost half my hearing in a few minutes. And so I couldn't hear, plus he had an accent. And so I was working away and he looked up at me and he said, that's what it sounded like. And I looked at Prabhupada. I didn't know if it was in the beginning before he ripped me apart the way Lord Sugardev would or what it was. So I tried to smile and look unhappy and happy at the same time, like, stretch my face to try to be neutral. And then I nodded my head and he said, I couldn't understand a word. And I kept on working feverishly. He said, do you know what is Rita Karama? I said, I just smiled and I said, do you know? And I knew that I didn't know. This was absolutely conspicuously obvious. So I shook my head and said, no, I don't know. Thinking maybe it would get me off the hook because I didn't know where he was going because I couldn't even hear him. And then he said, he sat up very straight and spoke so clearly to me that even with being deaf, I could hear him say, they should call you Vishwakarma. And I looked at him and I said, okay, what does that mean? They should call me Vishwakarma. He gave me the spiritual name, Nara Narayan Das. What about, where's Vishwakarma? They should call me Vishwakarma. I didn't have any idea, but I sort of smiled like, if it's a good thing, I'm smiling. If it's not a good thing, I'm grimacing, I'm looking sad. If it's good, I'm smiling. If it's bad, I'm not looking happy. Okay. I didn't know what else to do. So I finished the work on his suitcase. And I came over, he was sitting, did you ever in the old farmhouse in New Vrindavan?
Yeah.
You were, do you know the staircase going up, that little tiny staircase?
I don't recall, but I remember the house.
The old farmhouse.
Yeah.
Well, if you ever went in up to his room, there was a little slightly winding staircase going up. And it was narrow. I mean, you could barely get your shoulder. You're a pretty big guy. You could hardly get your shoulders through. So anyhow, I was sitting there. So Prabhupada was sitting to my right near the stairs. I was sitting to his left, completely and utterly freaked out. And Pradyumna, Purushottam, his personal servant, always had a shirt protector in his pocket protector in his pocket, pens, and a notepad. Because whenever he came to see Srila Prabhupada, as soon as he came downstairs, everyone would pounce on him and tell them exactly what Prabhupada said. He was like, if he came down and said, I don't remember, they would have killed him or something pretty close. So he had to write down everything that Prabhupada said so he could give the latest transcendental Krishna Loka message from the transparent biomedium of Krishna in Krishna Loka in such a way that he heard it, now they want to hear it, and they're not going to settle for less. So Pradyumna came up, not Pradyumna, but what do they call him? It was not Pradyumna, it was
Purushottam. Yeah.
Purushottam came up, and he looked at Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada looked over at him very casually. He was sitting there, how Prabhupada would sit with one leg stretched out and one leg sort of crooked so that his knee was up. You remember him doing like that?
It's my favorite posture of Prabhupada.
Okay, so he was sitting there like that, leaning against the pillow, looking the same pillow where you translate every night. I used to sneak up halfway up the stairs and listen to him writing the books. And anyone who thinks he wasn't being guided by Krishna doesn't know what they're talking about. I could explain that in some different time. But he looked over at Purushottam and said, casually, gesturing at me slightly, but making a big gesture to Purushottam, they should call him Vishwakarma. Well, guess what Purushottam did? He whipped his notepad out of his pocket, flipped it open, grabbed the pen,
Oh,
and said, Vishwakarma. And he made sure it was spelled right. So they could call him Vishwakarma. You gave him the name Nara Narayan. So you're changing his name to Vishwakarma. This is the first time you've ever changed anyone's initiated name. How can I explain that to anyone? And Prabhupada said, no, I am not changing his Nara Narayan name. Vishwakarma. It is, then he went, gestured grandly. I don't know if you can see me. Gestured grandly and said, it is title like PhD.
yeah, it's
That's
like
what he
it's
said.
like
Vishwakarma is
Kaviraj.
my PhD title. So
Or-
anyhow, so I never give it as a name. I write Nara Narayan Das Vishwakarma because that's my title. So
So
then he was
my point of you telling this story, this is my point, is that you're Vishwakarma and you're able to do this, you're empowered to do this, and you have the ability and the brainage to put a program together that will work, and we're here to support you, and we'll find more people.
Thank you. And with one quality. What is the one quality we're going to use?
Humility.
No, forget it. What are we going to use?
Bazookas.
What's that?
I don't know.
Okay, what are we going to use?
Love.
No.
Tanks.
Well, what?
Russia.
No. You liked it before when I said it. Common sense.
Oh, common sense.
Common sense.
We don't need any of this sentimental claptrap. We need common sense. Because with common sense, Prabhupada belongs in the center of ISKCON. With common sense, his instruction to elect the GBC is long overdue, 52 years overdue. With common sense, the temples need to be individually incorporated so those capitalist pigs don't control it, ISKCON. Those greedy people, they've turned everyone against Prabhupada by turning people to them and their appointed followers who are supposed to be doing initiations. They're turning everybody systematically against Srila Prabhupada. Are we going to sit back like a bunch of eunuchs
No,
and accept that?
no.
Or are we going to show some cojones and not accept it? So you see what I mean? Common sense. Common sense means we do not accept the GBC because they committed a crime 52 years ago. And just because this is 52 years later doesn't mean they can say, oh, it's 52 years ago. Prabhupada changed his mind so many times. He worked for us. He called us GBC. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because he was dealing with people that eventually poisoned him to death 7 years later. They gave him arsenic and cadmium or whatever 7 years later. And these are the people we have to pay attention to and kowtow or their followers? Why? We have our spiritual master. And I don't care if who was initiated by who. You can say, you can be initiated by whoever you like, but your spiritual master is Srila Prabhupada. Because the one that initiated you can't deliver you from repeated birth and death. Certainly not without Prabhupada. That's what they're trying to do. They're just
Doesn't common
representing the
sense come from the
GBC.
mind?
What? What do you
Doesn't
say?
common sense come from the mind?
No, it comes from the heart. Common sense comes from the jiva.
Doesn't the
The jiva is in the
I thought
heart.
the jiva had something. I
Consciousness.
thought the jiva may have had.
What?